Your favorite Eldritch Horror here. When I'm not making movie reviews, I'm a professional writer in the film industry and published author. So here's my take on Barbie, the hot pink absurdist feminine fantasy with painfully real undertones.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
When my heart breaks.
A movie with an emphasis on weak and incomplete men and abusive and delusional women while staying entertaining and funny. I took my 5'10" Nigerian Barbie thicker than an M1 Abrams filled with peanut butter to this movie, mixed in some fun with the Wii vibe, and it turned into a great date night. The movie starts with an over-the-top sequence of song and dance, taking the viewer through a day in the life of Barbie. The non-functioning appliances and imaginary food illustrate that Barbie's so deeply engaged in her world of fantasy that she can actually feel the non-existent water and taste the imaginary food. They interact with the Kens in a ruthlessly apathetic way, making the viewer both immediately sympathize and despise the Kens. The desperation in their love of the Barbies is off-putting at best. The Barbies themselves interact in a perpetual circle jerk of manic positivity, eternally breaking their wrists, patting each other on the back for the accomplishment of simply existing. As this scene draws to a close, the main Barbie breaks character and admits that she's been having irrepressible thoughts of death, which abruptly stops the good time vibes. Barbie's deluded fantasies begin crumbling around her as the imaginary water is now freezing cold, the non-existent food tastes rotten, and she no longer perpetually high heels. She even fails to fall gracefully down from her house, instead dropping like a greased brick. This confrontation with reality forces Barbie to undertake a quest to fix herself. Of course, in this anti-feminist masterpiece, the concept of fixing a woman is to simply re-establish her delusions and ensure that the real world will never be confronted again. Needless to say, Ken's obsession with Barbie forces him to ride along for the adventure into the real world. Once in the real world, Ken takes the mantle as the main character when his mind shatters upon the realization of what masculinity looks like. He revels in the appeal of trucks and horses and handshakes. He has an Alpha Sigma grind set compilation highlight reel of peak male performance ending in Stallone shirtless beneath a massive fur coat. Like a true Giga Chad, Ken immediately leaves Barbie. Having his simp software overwritten, he no longer gains validation from the attentions of Barbie, and instead he runs back to Barbie Land to gift this realization to the other Kens, a true brother in the hardest of times. Meanwhile, back in the real world, Barbie faces both over-the-top sexism from men as well as the backbiting shame and guilt tactics of aggression so commonly expressed in emotionally abusive women. Barbie quickly grows to hate the real world and desperately misses her fantasy, where she is glorified and pedestalized without end. Under the new rule of the Kens, Barbie Land turns into a utopia. Mojo Dojo Casa houses for everybody. And the Kens are finally getting the validation they always craved, and almost all of the Barbies are happy to cooperate with this new way of things. Even the former president of Barbie Land tosses aside her authority, relieved to not have those responsibilities anymore, leaving only the ugly and unwanted Barbies alone, although those unwanted Barbies are quick to accuse the rest of being brainwashed. I thought this was yet again a great way to insult both sides, insulting men by accusing them of being shallow and only wanting the beautiful Barbies, while also removing the autonomy of those Barbies, implying that they're not capable of making their own decisions, a common tactic. The Barbies design a plan to divide and conquer by romantically entangling themselves with the Kens and then ghosting them and changing partners. They cause the Kens to go to war with each other. Yet another tactic of the abusive female that has been used to great effect throughout history. Looking at you, Helen of Troy, sending Sparta to war just for the memes. Lamau, 20-year siege, lol. The Kens have an amusing and intense yet totally non-harmful war. Meanwhile, the Barbies vote themselves back into power and once again re-establish the status quo of deluded fantasy. Ironically, this movie was a bittersweet ending, and not the feminist propaganda a lot of terminally online people might have you believe. The Barbies got to continue living in their world of toxic unreality, while the Kens were awoken. The Kens broke free from the yoke of female validation and gained an insight into healthy masculinity. Truly impressive character growth that I could not have expected from this movie. I really enjoyed having my expectations subverted and seeing that the Kens were in fact the oppressed class in Barbie and the main characters all along. Finally, I enjoyed the psychedelic feel to the movie. I can imagine this being a hit amongst myself and other cosmic horrors when we were still young, taking some lucid skyward dreams, if you know what I'm saying, and feeling the plastic of Barbie land crawl along our nervous system would have been quite the experience. For today's summoning ritual, I give Barbie movie a 16 out of 21. Five out of 7 sacrifice cultists. The characters and acting were spot on, and the emotional impact was greater than I could have expected. 6 out of 7 screams of the damned. It was gorgeously shot, creative, original, and the aesthetics never seemed out of place. And 5 out of 7 tentacles of Cthulhu. It was reasonably engaging in that I never got bored, and the writing was clearly a genuine effort, but the plot was entirely forgettable, and entire segments of the plot and cast are a struggle to remember. In the end, it was a genuinely enjoyable movie, absolutely worth seeing at least once and for a lot of people many times. The optimist will be left satisfied and the pessimist surprised. That's all for today, mortals. Until next time. Oh, and at the end, Barbie grows a vag. Totally forgot about that part until I wrote this script. Do what you will with that information.